Alright, so as if all my other chapters weren't terribly controversial enough, this chapter is all about marriage and kids. I apologize in advance. I, in no way, am trying to say that people that do the things that I'm going to say in this video are bad, stupid, or anything like that. It's just my opinion of a different way that it can be done, and just opinion. And I'm not saying that anything on them. You do what you want to do. Obviously that's how this whole thing works. So yeah, let's get into it. Anyway, when it comes to marriage and kids, a lot of people believe from the roots of the Bible that basically God said to go forth and multiply. Now, that was a very good sentiment at the time because the mortality rate for infants and children and just people in general was just terrible, terrible, terrible. You basically had to have like 18 kids if you wanted like two or three of them to survive. That's just how it used to go. People would just keep making babies till they couldn't make babies anymore, and then whoever survived, great. But now it's a little bit different. Now, if two people get together, basically, I want to say like 99% of the time, you have two kids. Those two kids are gonna make it. For the most part, they're gonna survive, obviously, and they're gonna, apart from an accident or something like that, or some other unfortunate thing that happens to them, but medically or something like that, for the most part, they're going to be around for a while. So people going out and having 8, 10, 12 kids nowadays is, I mean, just please stop doing that. For one, the financial burden of having just one child is immense, very immense. This is an old study said something about it costs like $1 million just to raise one child all the way through college. I don't know about you, I don't have $1 million. So even with a good salary like 60K where both parents work, that'll take you not 10 years. Yeah, almost 10 years, like 18 years or something like that to come up with $1 million. So 18 years, that's the entire time. So basically, you can really only afford the one kid, unless you make like twice that. So anyway, just a little put the perspective out there. Not only that, but I'm not saying that this is 100% sure that this is how this happens, but if you have more than one kid, I mean, how much attention can you really spend? And I'm not saying stay-at-home moms can't spend all their time with their kids, because I mean, that's one thing, but I mean, what about the dad? Somebody's got to work. So at some point, someone from one of those parents is going to be neglected and not have as much attention paid to them. Going back to the prisons and all the criminality in the earlier chapters, a lot of that can be prevented by sound parenting and being involved with your children, and making sure they get a good education, and being able to pay for that. So there's that. Also, I'm sure you probably picked up my subtle hints that I'm a pretty big environmentalist, and unfortunately, a lot of us tend to believe that we have quite the overpopulation problem, and one of the only ways to save the environment, to have enough resources for everyone, is to try to figure out a way to lower our population a little bit. And sometimes that happens, whether it be natural disasters or wars or whatnot, but because of a lot of the other things, super cities and hopefully the later chapters that I have on peace, we'll get rid of those things. So we're probably going to have to start thinking pretty hard about controlling the population ourselves, doing it in a non-violent way that doesn't involve hurting anyone. So one of the ways that I propose we focus our attentions is on birth control. And I know some people don't believe in birth control. Some people are for one form and they are for the other. Like some people like, oh, just use a condom, blah blah blah. That's all you need. I'm kind of one of those people, just because it's a mixture of staying safe not only from pregnancy but STDs. Always use a condom, blah blah blah. The other people on the other side are, oh well, I guess you just don't like how sex feels. Why don't you just use birth control? And then people on the other side are like, oh well, that's messing with your hormones and this and that. So there's a lot of different things to consider when considering birth control. Also, it's like a everyday kind of thing, once a day. Condoms is in every act, or other ones you can have a patch, you can get injected when it can last for longer, but you don't know how those things are going to affect you, and some people just don't like birth control just because of the hormone aspect of it. hopefully, looking back to the previous chapter, medical science, there's actually a little device that I would like to see developed. Basically, what it is recently NASA developed a nanotube technology that I'm not sure if it's theoretical if they actually developed it, but what it does is it can basically measure your radiation sickness effects. Well, they isolated a symptom of radiation sickness and then a detector for that, and then once that happens, then what it would do is the nanotube releases radiation sickness medicine, basically, to dumb it down. And a nanotube is basically just a very, very small little thing that you can implant under the skin, wherever, and if it receives because they don't have access to doctors out in space, so this is why they developed this, so they can have the thing. And it had been suggested that this can be used, to release insulin, to any number of things that this sensing and distribution thing can be used to do. But my proposal is to use it for birth control. And the way I propose that we use it is to basically develop a nanotube that isn't really very nano. It's this one would probably actually be a little bit bigger. And what it would do is it would fit into a woman's fallopian tubes. And I'm sorry that I'm getting into some medical and like sexual things now, but basically you'd have one in each tube. And what it would do is every month, depending on which side released the egg, it would actually capture that egg and store it. Hopefully, like if it can freeze it or some way to preserve it. You don't really have to preserve it; you just catch it. So that way, you don't use any hormones, you don't use any of this, and hopefully each one of these can hold several of them. So you don't have to take a pill every month. You just come in. It's a little procedure. They come in. They can extract it, put a new one in there whenever you go see your gyno or whatever. And this way, you don't have to worry about. It would be just like the long-term birth control. You don't have to worry about taking a pill every day. You don't have to worry about using a condom every time. And by that, I mean, hopefully, with my familiars chapter, people lower the overall amount of sexual partners they have. So that, I mean, you just have a few partners and then you're familiar, so you won't be spreading any STDs. So you don't have to worry about using the condom. So basically, everyone can just have, like, not everyone at the same time, but I mean, with your partner, you can have your protected sex, and every 3 months or 6 months or a year, depending on how big these things are, how much they can store, you would just go and have them replaced. And there is pretty far-reaching. I think that takes care of a lot of the downplay of birth control, just that in itself. Hopefully that takes care of that situation with birth control, and we don't, with the medical science, we can cure all the STDs and viruses and lower our, well, I mean, also with medical, I guess, kind of, let's put all these together with medical and the familiars. Not only would we be working actively to cure those diseases, but also lower the amount of their spread. Yeah, so sorry, side note. Anyway, so I'm not sure how much I should go into resources, talking about resources and how limited they are with regards to having so many children, but I really think that just one or two kids is just more than enough. And that's just my personal opinion. Obviously, some people feel that they need lots. And another thing that I think is on the rise is getting married too soon. All the divorce rates, I think it's like if you get married today, like you have a 50-50 shot of getting divorced. That's how bad it is. So, in my opinion, I think there should kind of, I'm just going to put it out just because it's my opinion. It doesn't have to be a law or anything. I don't really care. But I think it should really be, you date somebody for like a year, and then you live with them for like a year, and then you're married with them for at least a year, and then you can have kids. Well, I think there should be minimum requirements. Like, I think you should have to take classes and just on child development, just to get you prepared for what you should expect, and testing you to make sure that you can actually handle those sorts of things. I actually have this, like, well, 2 years for each of those, I think. I really think you should be at least 24 years old, have dated for 2 years, lived together for 2 years, married for 2 years, and then have kids. So what is that? Dated, lived, married. So that's 6 years total. So since you're 18 plus 6, 24, yeah, you'd be 24 years old before you'd be eligible to have kids. Before they'd stop and they take out the little device, the little birth control device that they put in there. But I mean, just like that's just my opinion, and that I mean, it could just be convenient to do it that way. It doesn't really have to be a law. It could just be more of like a social thing that we all just decide to do. That would be nice. Come on, if your prefrontal cortex isn't really even fully developed until you're 22, sometimes later. So you really probably shouldn't be making more kids when you're still kind of a kid at that point. Plus, you really want to have enough time to get a college education. So 18 to 22, you get your 4-year degree. A couple more years, you get a master's. You know, you're 24. I think that's a pretty good time. Or any time after that, you settle down, get time for your career or whatever you want to do, something like that. But I mean, if it was socialist at that point, because of my economy chapter, I mean, there'd be a lot more taken care of, a lot less stress. But also, along the lines of education, I think there should be a system in place, kind of like a big brother, big sister type of system, where if you want to have a child, you should be matched up with, I think, like 18, probably more like 9, like half of that, like 9 couples with children of varying ages of different like sets, just so that you can get to know more kids, get to know how they develop over time. So basically, what would happen is you apply to get like having a baby license, I guess. What would happen is they would match you up with these 9 different people. When the first person, obviously, that baby would be an infant, and you would spend some time with them, help them take care of it. The child, help them take care of the child. Sorry about that. And then you'd spend like a month or whatever time frame that you'd actually be able to interact with them a little bit, and not just saying hi and then leaving, just get to know them a little bit, and how things that they encounter on that stage of development, diaper changing and different sorts of nutrition, stuff like that, stuff that they have to worry about, like real life situations and stuff. And then move on to the 2-year-old, and then move on to the 4-year-old, and then the 6-year-old, and then the whatever, moving on up, just so that you get a good grasp of all these kids and their stages of development and whatnot. And this actually would do 2 things. For one, it would familiarize the new couple who wants to have a kid with how to take care of a kid, their different stages of development, and also on the side of the parents that they're helping out, or well, interacting with. I don't want to say it would give them like a free babysitter for a while, but it kind of would. Once you get over the introductions and this and that, they might actually be able to spend time with them, so that couple can come and get out and spend some time together on their own and enjoy themselves a little bit. Not that raising kids is just this terrible tragedy that you happen, but I mean, every once in a while you need some time off. If you don't want to do that, if you want to spend time with them too, that's cool. But I mean, there should be some time set aside for them to be alone, just to make sure that they can do it, I guess. Something like that. It doesn't have to, it's not set in stone. It's just an idea, like I said. But anyway, and also for the children themselves. Not a lot of people know this. Or, well, there's been like this boom of reports of child sexual abuse. And this is, I'm sorry, I'm like smiling when I'm saying this. This is fucking tragic. And a lot of times kids grow up in these environments and they don't know any different. So if their mother, father is sexually, physically abusing them, they don't know that it's wrong. They've never had this other environment. So what this does, it allows other people that aren't family members into the little inner circle, just in case, and they might end up uncovering something that shouldn't be there, or just giving them a different educational perspective. Basically, like the Big Brother Big Sister program, it basically just gives them someone else to interact with and learn from. It would really hopefully be a big benefit not only to the kids, but the new parents, not the old parents, but the current parents. It would hopefully just be a big bonus to everyone in there. So that's what I think. And but yeah, with that and the education system in the previous chapters, hopefully with more parental involvement, more of this outside parental involvement, making sure people are really ready to have children, ready to be married for forever, not just, oh, I'll be married to you for 5 years or so just because that's the fad that's going on right now. Hopefully we can produce healthier children, more educated children with less traumas and all this other huge benefits in the long run, I think, to society in general, because children are our future, and if you think any different, then you're fucking wrong. I'm sorry. If you don't like my education chapter, then there's something wrong with you. If you don't like this chapter, if only for the fact that you should like it just because I'm really trying to promote overall health, mentally, physically, for future generations, because they're just so important and people don't really realize the effects that the decisions that we have today have on our future as a species, as a planet, other things like that. Hopefully, we can all agree on at least that.